so the company is Shield AI. You know, the space is defense tech, which is kind of funny because back when we founded on this day in 2015, defense tech was not a sector, that was not a moniker. It kind of took Shield AI and a couple of other companies at the time to be, I think there were 3 by the time we were in 2016, and then it kind of became clear that I guess this is a sector. When it started, we started with a mission to protect service members and civilians. And back in those early days, we were still in counterinsurgency. And my co-founder, he was a Navy SEAL, and he was coming out of his operations, and he was a little tired of getting shot at. He was asking, why is the first thing we send into a door to clear a building a person? Why is a person opening a door where we don't know if there's going to be a loaded gun behind it, a terrorist, a hostage, bombs ready to blow? Can't we send in a robot? And meanwhile, at the same time, I was at Draper Labs just down the street developing Charles Stark
Draper. So
that's
the inspiration behind Tony Stark.
That's right. And I was developing these, fully autonomous quad rotors that could fly through a building and give you a full 3D map. But I couldn't find a customer to buy it. I couldn't find a sponsor. And so when we met up, I had this technology with no use really, and he had this use that needed just needed the technology. It really just made sense to get together. And that was something that we focused on for several years. It was very rewarding, made a difference. And then over time, we climbed the AI pilot food chain. We went to larger and larger drones to further our mission impact. We went from a small drone that you would carry in your backpack and send into a building to a larger drone that you'd carry in the back of your pickup truck and could, fly 200 miles without GPS over into, some of the territories that our friends earlier were talking about. And now we're working on full fighter jets that are fully autonomous and incredibly capable.
But in terms of fighter jets, they don't have the same dimension of the probably fighter jet that comes to mind.
The new ones we're working on do actually have
so they're big.
Same dimensions.
They're not the small. Yeah.
No, we're getting bigger and bigger.
So maybe tell me, when you went to nuclear, what were you hoping to do, and why did you not stick with that? I'm just trying to understand your founder journey.
Yeah. So after 7 years at Shield AI, I loved the company, I loved everyone there, and I loved the mission. But I wanted to do something else. I wanted to focus on decarbonization, and so I was looking at where could I have the most direct impact as an engineer on decarbonization. It was another mission that I was very excited about. And so I worked down the whole technology tree of the overlap between my skill set and decarbonization technologies and where I thought I could have an impact. And so I found an advanced reactor company that was working on some pretty exciting stuff. And so they brought me on board to do all their software. I'm still a fan of nuclear, but ultimately, as soon as I joined, they said, well, we don't actually need any software for the next 2 years, so maybe you could work on some other stuff.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, I'm preparing the documentation to give to the regulators to say why the nuclear plant won't melt down.
You're doing the policy side of it.
Yes, and
building the software.
And I was no nuclear engineer, so ultimately I decided to get back to robotics and to further my decarbonization journey as an indirect investor.
And then what did you do in robotics?
So I worked on humanoid robotics.
Yeah.
It was very cool. Very cool to be working really at the forefront of the next hype cycle.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to see how robotics, going from drones to humanoids, how it's really all the same problems in some way and all the same solutions, but then in other ways it's just such a different setup, a different scenario. It was an interesting contrast.
So maybe walk me back to the 2015, the early days. What were you doing with drones that shows how limiting they were back then? They couldn't do what they can do now.
Oh, sure.
And then where do you think the drone space is going? There are a lot of different people thinking about drones. I was in a meeting with a congressman, and someone asked, would you prefer an aircraft carrier or a bunch of drones? Hands down, drones. So I feel like drones are going to become more and more important, and it sounds like you're a very creative engineer. Maybe extrapolate, where do you think things are going?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so to start back in 2015, if you wanted to send a robot into a building, you were sending a tracked robot. It was large, it was heavy, you took a whole Humvee to bring it there, it was slow, you had to come out of combat to stare at your controller to understand what it was doing, and then it would be stymied by anything as basic as stairs. It couldn't do much. And so we were the first ones to say, we could do this with flying robots. And of course, quadrotors existed at the time, but they could only fly outdoors. We made ours that could fly indoors fully autonomously. It could go in, communications would get lost, but it knew it had the sensors and it had the computer and it had the algorithms to map out the building, to fly through it as fast as possible, to understand the whole layout, to see who is there, what's interesting, and allow an operator to just passively watch it on his or her phone in a way that doesn't take them out of combat. So that was remarkable at the time. Since then, we've built bigger and bigger drones. We've put our autonomy onto platforms that are both ours and others. And to answer the second part of your question, where is this all going? I mean, there's definitely a trend towards, and now as we've learned from the Ukraine-Russia war, a really large importance of having attritable assets, of having, not just big battle cruisers, but small things that can get in, get out, and if they get shot down, it doesn't cost you billions of dollars. And one way that we achieve that is that by putting more smarts onto your platforms, by adding sensors and compute and algorithms and making them as smart as possible, even though those individual components may, add money, add complexity, they have a cost, they give your platform so much more capability that it now has the capability and can do the same missions as much bigger and more expensive assets. Thus, when comparing on a capability basis, you now have a product that costs 1/10 as much, and you can deploy 10 times as many of them and really accomplish all your mission needs.
Great. Now that you're back at Shield, are you able to work on software?
I am delighted to be back working on software, doing the GPS-denied navigation systems for our aircraft.
Great. Well, you guys were showcasing innovators, and I think the fact your journey of how you really want to make a difference, and we're thinking about sustainability and the carbon footprint, and threw yourself into nuclear. I mean, my guess is as you extrapolate where drones are going, nuclear is going to be on them as a power source, and the drones are going to inform what future robots look like. So I feel like you've been preparing like the Karate Kid for something really big down the road.
One of the largest concentrations of nuclear reactors we have is in the San Diego harbor on all the battleships. Not everyone knows there's about 7 nuclear reactors there. But I think we should keep them out of the skies.
Yes, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, an entrepreneur and an MIT grad, and you see his life journey. Thank you.
Thank you.